Wedding Talk with Mindy and Carol, your insider guide to trends, tips, and stress free planning.
Hi, this is Carol.
Hey, and I'm Mindy, and between Carol and I, we plan about 50 destination weddings each year.
Today we're going to talk about why we feel travel insurance for weddings or any other trip is very, very important. Mindy, what kind of insurances do we offer?
So we offer several different types of trip insurance. Both of them are pretty much cancel for any reason. The difference is how you would be refunded your money if you were to cancel prior to going to destination rather. So one is cancel for any reason, receive your money back in a future trip credit that you would have a certain amount of time to use. And it doesn't necessarily have to be used at the same resort that you're going to. Just depends on how the policy is written. And the other one is the money would go back to your original credit card. Now, there is a price difference between the two, obviously, but as far as what's included in them, if you were to get hurt in destination or you needed to stay longer, those kind of things are the same within the trip insurance policies.
Yeah. And today we brought on my husband, Jeff, and we're going to kind of talk about why in our destination wedding, why travel insurance was very, very important to kind of give everyone an example of what actually can happen once you are at resort and what could happen with and why you would use your travel insurance. So, welcome, Jeff. We are going to ask you kind of, I mean, I was there, of course, I knew what happened, but let's kind of let everybody know out there exactly why we had to use insurance and what happened after our destination wedding.
Well, we were in Jamaica. It's been what, 4 years now. And my dad was probably 80 at the time, or maybe 82, and his health wasn't great. And but he really wanted to go on this trip. That's all he talked about. When we going, when we going. So we thought, this will be the last family thing we do. So we got out there a couple days before, and they flew out, I believe, on a Sunday. And my dad had diabetes and a few other problems. But next Monday, mom called and said, Dad's not feeling good. So I thought, oh boy. And we got there and he looked pale and just wasn't feeling right. So we called the nurse up there and she, checked his blood pressure and oxygen and everything wasn't looking too good. And so we called the family doctor back home. My sister did and kind of told him what's going on. He goes, well, I don't know. He sounds like maybe he's got a little pneumonia going on. And he was fine before he got on the plane, but maybe, the when he was in the air, maybe that did something to his lungs. We don't know. So, well, he went off in an ambulance and we took him to a private hospital, the best in Jamaica, which is, a third world country. So we wanted to get the best we could do for him. And my sister went with him and we proceeded to go about our business. And we got married on Wednesday. And we videotaped it, and my sister said, Dad's doing pretty good today. So we waved at him and said hi, wish you were here. And then he took a turn for the worst. And Friday came and he passed away. So it was kind of like
Wow.
a Hollywood movie. It was just like, what the heck's going on here?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
in hindsight, honey, maybe we should have flew him to Miami, but they won't let us do that, would they?
No, so the thing what happens with a lot of these policies is and this is stuff that we found out just being there is if they're in a hospital and that hospital feels that they can treat them, most policies have like emergency evacuation, but that's not just on your choice. So if the hospital feels that they can treat that person for what they are or feel that they shouldn't fly as of yet or things like that, then they can keep them there and the insurance policy will not pay for you to bring them to the United States. The only way that we could have brought him to the United States is if we would have hired a Medijet to come down, and that wasn't covered under the original insurance policy, which would have been $36,000.
Wow.
So, yeah, so that was some of the choices, we had to make. So we chose to choose to believe the doctor in Jamaica that he could make him better, and it just never happened. So, unfortunately, things got worse, and then here you are, you have family there. I mean, his brother had gone and switched off with his sister and gone to the hospital before he passed away. And then he had passed away late in the evening. And at that time, it was still during COVID, so they had a curfew. So he couldn't come back to the hotel that evening. So I had to get him a hotel in Montego Bay to stay. So we had to file a claim for a trip interruption for him for that stay for the one night. Um, the ambulance required their money up front, which they do in any country, as we all know. So you have to have a credit card with you to make sure that you've got enough money to pay for that. Same goes with the insurance company worked with the hospital. They told him they would cover up to the amount on the policy for his hospitalization. And I believe with Delta Vacations, I believe they had like 30,000 for medical on that policy. And his was
Mhm.
like right at 32 or 33. So they required that 2 to 3 thousand dollars, at the time when his stay was over. And then there's the activities that have to be done to get that body out of the country. So
Yeah.
in Jamaica, I mean, I learned a lot. I mean, which, how to get a body home from Jamaica. But luckily, with my connections with the Jamaica Tourism Board, I got them involved and they really stepped in. I called the embassy like they tell you to. The embassy really didn't do anything for us, to be honest. The embassy just kind of did their own thing and kind of, told us, work through the process, whatever. But what we had to do is, he had passed away. I think it was on a Friday. Well, everybody and the family went home on Saturday, and they all went back home and tried to start funeral arrangements at home. And they still needed a next of kin to stay and identify the body and things like that. So Jeff and I ended up staying. um, we ended up moving from Negril, where we got married, to Montego Bay because that's where his body was, because that's where he got moved to. Um, so we moved to another hotel after our wedding. We had to make on Monday an appointment. We had to go to the police department in Jamaica, and they had to file an official report on his death. That took a long process. And then from there, um, we had to get the Jamaica Tourism Board involved to see if they would waive an autopsy. Because in Jamaica and many other countries, you have to be seeing a doctor in that country for over 6 months, or you can't you can't go out of the country without an autopsy to why you died in that country.
Interesting. I did not know that.
Yes. So that was something that we had to see. So the Jamaica Tourism Board got involved and asked the embassy to waive that right for no autopsy so that we could get his body, going back to the United States. Um, they they did not waive it. So in Jamaica, we did not know this either, but most people do have an autopsy because most people don't see the doctor. And it's on a need basis, which could be up to 3 to 6 months. You put your name in line. But we could pay for a private autopsy and they would do it in 1 to 2 days. And so, my thought was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be really expensive. And I think it was like 300 US dollars to have a private autopsy. The insurance, I don't believe covered it. I'm not sure if they did. I don't think we did have to pay for it, but we said it didn't matter. We were going to go ahead with it. So then once we would have the autopsy, they would release his body, and then the funeral home would come get him, and then we could fly him back to the United States.
So
So
from the time he passed away to the time the autopsy was done and you were able to fly him home, how many days was that?
Oh, wow.
I think it was the Wednesday, so almost a week after he died before we
Wow.
could get the autopsy performed. And that's just because the Jamaican Tourism Board was involved. I
You're
think
right.
it would have been a lot longer than that. So they agreed, and then they set up the autopsy then for Thursday morning. And
Hmm.
then so that was at the time we still had to take COVID tests. So Jeff said, okay, we're all set to go. Thursday afternoon, we're going down to do the autopsy. Let's go ahead and take our COVID test on Thursday morning, and then we'll fly out on Friday. And then, they'll bring dad's body home. So go ahead, Jeff. What happened next?
Well, we're waiting there, and I don't know, I had a little sniffle. I mean, nothing really felt. I felt good. I thought, I'm gonna pass this easy. So you went in first, and you came out, and then I went in there, and they stuck the swab clear up in your brain almost, and so I came out, and I'm sitting there, and then they called you up, Miss Carroll, you're good, and I'm looking around, okay, waiting, waiting. I'm saying this isn't going to be good. Something's going on here, and
Mhm.
so they came back and they, said, you got to come back here again. They said you tested positive. I said, you got to
Wow.
be kidding me. I said, do it again.
This
Stick
can't be
stick
right.
that
If
thing as
everything
far
we're
as it'll
going through,
go.
this cannot be right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I felt fine. I mean, I had a little
Yeah.
sniffle, but I've got, a sinus problem sometimes anyways. They did it again, and sure enough, I was positive. I'm like, oh
Wow.
man, what do we do now? So I'm looking at Carol and I'm going, well, looks like I'm stuck. They're gonna have to quarantine me probably for 5 days.
Yeah.
I mean,
That.
it's strange. We were together the whole time and I was positive and she wasn't. It's just, how does that happen?
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. So then,
I don't get it.
yeah. So then, then of course, I called the resort manager because they are escorting us both back to the room and they're going to quarantine both of us into the room until I leave on Friday. And I'm like, no, I can't stay here. We got to go to the morgue and identify his dad's body for the autopsy. And so the manager, we had moved over to Sandals Royal Caribbean. They did a really great job with us. They went ahead and the manager came up to the room and stood outside the room, and I called the Jamaica Tourism Board. She called the police department, and they agreed since Jeff and I were now married, I could be considered next of kin to go identify his body. So they made Jeff stay, and I had to go down into the Jamaican morgue and identify his body and do the autopsy. So he had to stay at the resort. They allowed me to go as long as I would go and come immediately back to the room. They didn't want me to mingle with the guests, which I get that. That was just at the time when they really weren't sure what was going on. Um, so I went down to the morgue and I had to do more paperwork down there. And it's not a place that I would ever suggest anyone would have to go ever in their life. But the gentleman did the autopsy fairly fast. We had to wait outside while he did that. And then once the autopsy was completed, the police department was there as well. They signed the paperwork off, and then the funeral home was waiting there. And, they basically said that he had heart failure, and the only thing that they could see is maybe he had some signs of some things of maybe possibly had cancer that no one knew about, which we didn't know anything more than his diabetes. I mean, I had to fill out some medical things like they asked what he was sick from, why he ended up in the hospital, things like that. Then they released him. That was fairly quick. Um, so then from there, I went back to they released him. I went back to the hotel. The funeral home took him there. And in the meantime, we were talking back and forth with our funeral home in Iowa about, transportation, what could happen when they're releasing the body, things like that. So once that was done, I went back to the hotel, went back to the room. I packed my stuff up. Jeff was there for another 3, 4 days. I think it was 5 days.
I think I was there. I think I was there for, let's see, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. I think I came back Tuesday. Yeah, it was 5 days.
Yeah.
I was there for
So
five
Wow.
days.
I left the next day and flew home. The funeral home started talking then with the funeral home in Jamaica. And then he was flown home actually on Thursday or Friday after Jeff. So he was almost there 2 weeks
Mhm.
before we could get him back home after the whole ordeal.
Yeah.
Did you have to make any kind of special arrangements with the airlines?
We didn't do that. The funeral home did that for us, and the insurance
Okay.
company did it. So
Okay.
between the funeral home in Jamaica and the funeral home in Iowa and the um and the insurance company, they lined up what day he was going to come home because there's only certain days and certain airlines that will take them.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, and so he flew home to Minneapolis. I believe it was on Thursday or Friday. So just about 2 weeks after he passed away. And
Mhm.
they said that was the gal at the funeral home. When I talked to her, she said that was totally expedited. Normally, it could be up to a month or longer,
Wow.
unless you do a cremation. And that was not something that his dad wanted. So,
Right.
yeah. So literally, I'm not really sure what that cost of bringing the body home and all that was. We never, ever, ever saw that bill. It went right between the funeral home and the insurance company. I'm sure it wasn't cheap. And we never had to pay for the cost of bringing his body from Minneapolis to the funeral home in Iowa. The insurance company covered that as well because we didn't have an airline that would fly into where he was.
Hmm.
Um, but then, the funeral home in Iowa took it over and had just a regular funeral. And, they were glad they had boots on the ground of somebody that had an idea what was going on because they had no idea of what to do either.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, it's a horror story that you never want to have happen at any trip. I mean, it can happen on a regular trip, let alone a destination wedding. Um, for that little bit of the $79, $89, whatever you have to pay for it, look how much money that saved the family in the long run and the stress.
And it just gives you that peace of mind when you're traveling that you are covered, that you have someone you can reach out to, the insurance companies to help guide you through that process as well, because you can be in some countries that you may not even speak their language. Luckily, you were in Jamaica, they speak English, so you are able to communicate and get things done a little bit faster. But, you know, when you have those language barriers and you're, in other countries too, it just adds to that stress.
Oh, yeah. And I can't say, like Jeff's sister, she missed out on all the wedding. She missed out on the whole entire vacation. And, we actually got married at Azul Negro. And when she was checking out on Friday, when she was getting ready to leave, they gave her another 4 to 5 night stay for free. They just felt so bad. I mean, the staff there, we cannot say, I mean, like we had to stay an extra couple days because we were going to go to, we were supposed to leave on Saturday and we had to stay till Monday. They're like, no worries, it's on us. I mean, because they saw the whole thing, they were there, that's not that big of a resort. So I can't say enough about the management. I mean, they could have charged us for the room for the extra couple days in Jamaica, and they didn't need to give her a stay. She didn't even ask for it. Just that's kind of the warmth of the people in Jamaica and the
Yeah.
hospitality, I feel somewhat. Um, but once Jeff got unquarantined and he, left, they just gave him a sheet of paper and, basically, the resorts when you're staying, they had a little bit of a lower cost if you stayed for quarantine or whatever. But that's also was covered by insurance,
Mhm.
So those things you just can't, I mean, those are unexpected. I mean, we never expected it.
Right, right.
It was, and it wouldn't have mattered if even COVID wasn't involved. Just think of I mean, look at all the tragedy that we had in the whole thing. It well worth paid for itself.
Yeah, and like your situation, you were dealing with a death of a loved one, but you can be traveling and you can, get sick or you can break your leg or something like that in these destinations and need medical treatment. And without the trip insurance, guess what? They're going to want a credit card right up front before they even look at you.
Yeah. I've had people in the Dominican Republic been in the hospitalized before and they had trip
Yeah,
insurance. But I mean, it
yeah,
happens and people don't even think about it. Most people, when you say, do you want trip cancellation insurance? They're like, well, I'm not going to cancel. I'm going to go.
exactly.
They don't
Yeah,
realize all the extra stuff that's involved.
yeah,
And, I
yeah,
really think it's important to get our story out there because, I mean, wow. It happened to me, and it's like when I was years and years and years ago, I was a believer that, I don't need insurance. I'll be fine. I'm not sick. I don't go anywhere without it now, ever.
yeah. Exactly. And I had a honeymoon couple a couple of years ago. They were moving right before the wedding. He pulled his back, did something. He was in excruciating pain. They got him through the ceremony, and reception. And that Monday, he had to go in and have back surgery. So they had to cancel the honeymoon. And without that, trip insurance, they would have lost over $10,000 on their honeymoon. And here's this young couple,
Yeah.
who would have thought, hey, I'm getting married, I'm young, I'm in my 20s, I'm healthy, and I'm going to need surgery. But it was just the way he moved and however, he moved, he did something and he needed surgery.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter how old you are, how good a health you're in, you know, purchase that trip insurance. You just never know what's going to happen. Or it may be where you're on your trip, but something happens back home that you need to leave early and get back home.
Yes. Yes.
So you really need to understand what's included in your trip insurance policy. And if you're someone that travels all the time, you may want to look into like a yearly policy as well.
Yes, because that's what I carry. And
Yeah, that's what I do.
yeah. And the other thing is, even if you don't want to do the cancellation insurance, there is a medical policy out there that you can buy. And that, to me, just being covered for that reason only, if that's what you want, make sure that you check into everything that's available before you just leave the country. Because once you leave the country, your US insurance does not cover you.
Exactly. Exactly. And a lot of people don't realize that either.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, that I just think I said that was to me that was a big importance. And when people ask me, and I'm like, oh, I could tell you a story. I say, I always
Yeah.
say, I can tell
Absolutely.
you a story that'll make you want to buy insurance every time. And when people hear, they're like, no, no, and it's like, yeah, it happens.
Yeah.
And it's just the way it is. Jeff, do you have anything more else to add that in your experience that you could say from it?
Well, yeah, a quick little story. After I was in there for 5 days going crazy, but they fed me good. I think I gained 5 pounds. I mean, and time passed quickly. There was football on TV, and I had a little balcony I could watch people and wave at them from afar. But anyways, I was released. I believe it was a Tuesday, and I was ready to get out of there. And manager was super gracious and very nice. And she goes, "We'll get you a car to the airport." I said, "Really? Oh, that's nice." So this nice Mercedes pulls up and the guy comes out and I said, "I'm Jeff." He goes, "Well, hello, Mr. Jeff. My name is Philip." I'm like, "What?" That was my dad's name. So that
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
kind of a weird coincidence. Yeah. So.
Philip took me to the airport.
So yeah, that's what we said. We said
So
so
yeah,
the guardian angel was over him the whole time. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So
So yeah,
Mhm.
so we think, I mean, like I said, we could tell people, and from our experience, and anyone that was there understands completely, and like I said, it also helped having, the hospitality industry in Jamaica is wonderful. They're
Yeah.
very gracious people. They really, I mean, I can't remember, I mean, throughout the whole week, whenever we'd be walking around, someone would stop us on the resort and say, how's your dad doing? When he was in the hospital, they just always would ask that. Um,
That's nice.
yeah, yeah. So it was really, they were really good. So I think that's all I really had to add. I appreciate Jeff telling us his story. I know it's a heartfelt story for him, anyways. It was, we were just talking, our anniversary was this week, and funny thing
Happy anniversary.
for the last 4 years, we've been celebrating it the wrong day because
Are
that
you
week
serious? How is that possible?
Well, that whole week was such a blur to us because
Yeah.
everything was going on. We were just going through the motions and getting everything through. We just went through the day of the wedding, and that was probably the day that everything was blocked out of what was happening with his dad because everybody was just having a great time. But I think it was on Sunday. His sister calls and she said, "Happy anniversary." I said, "I think our anniversary's tomorrow." I said, "We've been celebrating at the 12th for as long as I know." I said, so this, I mean, that can happen too. But now we know,
Yeah.
hey, because we had to, because of COVID, it was like our third replan. I mean, we planned
Yeah.
it, canceled it, replanned it. So, we were one of those couples during that time that we had to cancel, rebook until we could find a time to go. So that could have been
Right.
part of the problem why we didn't know the day we were getting married because it kept changing.
that was getting
It
old. I
kept
don't know.
changing.
Yeah.
But anyway, so now we know what we said. We're going to start marking on our calendar, but one day or give or take, it's fine. It's all good. So,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So I think the next week we're going to be talking with a villa owner in Jamaica about her destination wedding location. So about having a wedding off property or just or some staying at the villa and the rest staying off property and how that works. So hopefully you can join us on the 21st is when we're going to meet with her. So it'll be later in that week when we'll make it live. So anything else to add, Mindy?
No, just you can find us on our Facebook. All our episodes are on YouTube. We also have our website, www.destinationweddingtalk.com. You can find us on TikTok. If you have any ideas for stories that you would like to um, discuss, reach out to us. If you'd like to be a guest on our podcast, if you recently had a destination wedding and want to talk about your experience, we'd love to have you on. So we appreciate you tuning in today, and hopefully, by just listening to Jeff and Carol's story, next time you are ready to take a trip, it will prompt you to purchase that trip insurance. It really does provide you with that peace of mind.
Yeah. Okay, well, thanks for now, and we'll see you next time.
Bye bye.
Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more wedding inspiration and tips. Visit us at destinationweddingtalk.com for resources and updates. And as always, send us your questions to Mindy and Carol. We love hearing from you. Join us again next week for the latest episode of Wedding Talk with Mindy and Carol. Until then, happy planning.